even though this game is now, what, 2 years old nearly or so. But it's still, the principle is still the same. It's basically this little simulation game, you click your way through, etc. The game per se plays wonderfully when you're on your own in a dark bedroom and without no one around. What they then do is they put the little frames around there. They throw up a lot of stuff to make you interact. If you want to be a bit negative about this, they throw up a lot of stuff so that you will bug your friends so that they will also play. So that's basically it. Now, what they do with it is something that is famously or infamously, depending on who you speak to, known as metric-driven design. The background to this is they basically track behavior. So on Farmville, you would start off with a pretty shabby little farm and a little barn, etc. And when you play really, really long or spend some money, then you might actually upgrade to a French chateau. Now, wouldn't we all want to have a French chateau and a virtual one at that? Probably not. However, my daughter was 13. She very, very desperately wanted a French chateau because her friends had it. So, because I did not allow her to purchase one, because you can, she had to play Forever in the Day, which had the slightly uncomfortable side effect that I constantly had to adopt cows and collect golden eggs and all the rest of it, so I could get something back to her so that she would actually advance in the game and finally could buy her a chateau. Metric-driven design that is, and very, very simplified. This is why Zynga managed to float for $8 billion or so market cap. It is a game of sources and sinks. So you have sources of cash in the game, and there's always two types of cash, right? There's the cash that you can actually play for, and then there's the real cash that you must acquire, or that you can also play for, but then it only accumulates really, really painfully slowly. So, but they are the sources, and then there are sinks in the game where you can spend all that stuff, and all you have to do is make sure that the sinks are a little bit bigger than the source, right? And then you put the cash, a vending machine next to it, and this is how you get really, really rich. So that is how most social games work, and the question is, is that really so social? And I'm not campaigning against Zynga or anyone else here, but in general, you should not coerce people when it comes to this. They will not like it. It's do you know who this guy is? Really? Wow, it's Bernie Madoff, right? Who's one of the biggest con men, I think, of recent years. So, you go in and you try to con people into stuff, they will eventually find out and they will not like it. Which is why I think, people like Zynga are very, very often looked at with a slightly skeptical and sometimes critical eye, because a lot of people have realized that, oh, you know what, I mean, it is fun and it is nice and all the rest of it, but they might not actually only be good. Now, to a company, when this is your business, then that might be fine. However, when you're a brand, to try and leverage these dynamics, then this is really, really bad. Anyway, so since vending machines clearly are not social, unless you would want to define them as the premium water cooler, but I thought let's have a look at what actually social is, right? So this is the social media thing, so we better know what it is. This is from Wikipedia, you don't have to take a photo. So social refers to the interaction of organisms with other organisms, and to their collective coexistence. And this thing continues for about half a page, but I'll spare you the rest, which will then look roughly like this. Or when you are in the human world like that. And they are both very, social situations. Now let's try something here, because we've had so many challenges to get anyone going. Everyone stand up, please. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things about me now. Whenever an attribute that pops up there does not apply to you, sit down. If there's one person standing after this, I will marry, irrespective of gender. Okay? So, I'm white. I'm male. If it doesn't apply to you, sit down. You know, there's no denying. I mean, this brings the masses down when you do this in the US. I'm a gamer. Surprise, surprise. Parent. An iPhone user. I'm also a BlackBerry user. And, you know, I'm not even halfway through. So, the question then is, you know, what on earth are you doing? You know, we obviously don't actually have that much in common. So, you know, what brings you here? And what does bring you here is a context. And we do share, irrespective of me being this weird guy that no one actually is you know, shares a sufficient number of interests with, we do have a common context today, and that's this social media thing, right? In one way or another. We arguably, unless you were half asleep or just needed a chair, you know, share an interest in social games, because otherwise, why would you have bothered to come in and listen? So we do have that context, and that all comes from a good old theory, which is not actually very new, and it's not a Web 2.0 or mobile social commerce whatever thing. It's an old sociological concept that basically says social interaction accrues around objects. And our object today is that social media feed, right? Now, in other words, social is interaction in context. And that context piece is really, really very important. Because this, at this time, is the object. You know, one of those guys might be a bin man, the other a dentist or whatever, and they might not actually have that much in common. One votes communist and the other is ultra-conservative. But whilst they're playing petanque, you know, there is a common object and they will spend time with each other. Now, you know, if you want to translate this into the branding world, in the brand world, for instance, you know, as long as you can make sure that your brand is an object that, you know, interests people, you have this little nucleus around which social interaction can occur. And what I'm saying is that games are actually a very, very powerful tool to do this. Now, you've got to make sure you're relevant, right? Otherwise, this doesn't work. And again, the question is the vending machine relevant? I'll get a little more philosophical here now. Because it is, so I used to be a lawyer. Quid pro quo is what defines contract theory in inverted commas. So used amongst lawyers very, very often. In order to determine, you know, is something fair and reasonable, just and reasonable, blah, 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 you know, you very often look at that quid pro quo. Now, at the center of the quid pro quo is an exchange of value. And this is why, you know, I said at the beginning, trading goes in order to pimp your app up in the rankings is not exchanging value. You know, that is something that is, you know, you could say, well, people didn't have to pay for this. It's an incentivized download where the app owner paid for. But at the end of the day, where is the value coming from? Right? The value might come that the mobile media guy in that company can then go to his MD and says, look, boss, you know, we're high up in the rankings. Now, in terms of, you know, where the value to their users is on this is a mystery to me. And value is not necessarily cash or saving or something like that, as we've seen at the Foursquare example, for instance. You know, value is being perceived. So as long as you perceive something as valuable, it doesn't really matter if there is a real-time value against this. Otherwise, no one would buy a virtual castle or a French chateau or whatever you want to call it. But it is the perceived value that comes with this. And the moment you balance this out, people are actually quite happy with this. Now, it's all about value then. And I go all the way back, because I think it was Procter & Gamble sometime in the 60s who came up with this idea, and I am led to believe that this came because they were wondering why some of their washing powder brands sold better than others of their washing powder brands, in spite of the fact that it was effectively the same bloody powder in them. It was just slightly different